Another episode. Brandon, Alex with you today. Second Look Sports Show. Justin is not with us today. He's grinding. He's got his curling that he's taking care of for the entire week. He's covering. I forgot what the event is. I actually should probably have had that in mind, but I know he's
not sure
dialed
either,
in.
to be honest.
He's dialed in, so he gave us the reins, and we're going to take them. But yeah, Brandon, ready to rock. Just before we kind of get into things, I know it's been kind of a great week of sports. How have you felt like the calendar kind of shifting towards pretty much like, we can go in a lot of different directions today. How has it felt kind of being a little bit more in the mix with a lot of the sports that are kind of back in the groove now that we hit sort of fall?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. We're back into that kind of rotation where we're hitting the MLB playoffs soon. The NFL has gotten its regular season underway. We've got the NHL in preseason. The NBA will soon start its preseason, and then we'll have obviously regular seasons in both of those sports. So it's one of the fun, pockets of the calendar where it's like every night you're seeing incredible stuff. Especially right now in the MLB with the kind of pre-playoff situations and everything happening there. It's been incredible, and we'll get into the Jays and how they fit into all that. But yeah, like I'm just excited again for hockey to get going with their regular season next week. There's going to be a ton of great sports in general just happening over the next, like you said, kind of that month, here from the middle of September to the middle of October as everything's either ramping up or kind of coming to a close. It's a great time of the year and always fun to kind of put the TV on and just see what happens, right? So.
Yeah, it's like literally if you just turn it on to any sports show, you're likely to find something good. Some nights a week, probably more than others. Like you can probably count on a lot of Thursdays, a lot of Saturdays, likely a lot of Sundays, especially with NFL. You can kind of just put anything on and you're probably likely to find something you're interested in. So this weekend, a ton of stuff to get into. You alluded to it. I think the best way to kind of get into things is just to get a gauge of how we as Jays fans feel. It's been a very up and down week for a lot of different reasons. And right now it's a bit of a high pocket. So I think we want to grab onto that as much as possible. And after we saw the 6-1 victory for the Jays last night, this is Friday, September 26th that we're recording, to check my watch to double check. The Jays did get the victory 6-1 over their final game with the Red Sox before they host Tampa Bay to end off their regular season. And it was kind of a cathartic victory for a number of reasons. And I think we can kind of get into that. But before we dive in, how do you feel as a Jays fan, Brandon, now with the fact that the last week's kind of been, like I alluded to, just all over the place?
No, I mean, I'm feeling really good.
Yeah.
There have been moments, like you said, where it's been kind of hit or miss. You don't really know what the situation was going to be. And of course, we knew that this weekend series against the Rays was going to factor in some way or another. But I think, like you said, after Thursday night's win, they just kind of, it feels like a little bit of relief, right? Kind of coming off your shoulders. Like they had a terrible stretch there where they couldn't get any runs going. Even the starting pitching didn't look great. And they were obviously taking losses left, right, and center. So
I know
now, you're feeling pretty good. We know that it's going to be up to the Jays, right? Like if they can win pretty much, I think 2 out of 3 of their last series against Tampa, I mean, you're feeling really good. And, even if things were to go haywire and they don't end up winning the division, I think you still have some signs that things are coming together and things are, we're not going to head into the playoffs, hopefully on this incredible low, that there's been a bit of a stopgap here and they have a chance to continue to push and keep doing what they've been doing all season, which is making adjustments, being able to come up with clutch at bats and clutch innings in big situations. So it's like one of those things where hopefully, Sunday's game isn't too important. Maybe you get to, allow Kevin Gausman to not have to go out there knowing that he might pitch, game 1 of a division series. So it's hopeful that that's the case. And if they can, like I said, get a couple more wins here and maybe the Yankees take a loss or two where we weren't expecting, then they'll be in a good spot. And obviously they'll be going to the division series right away and they'll be able to take a week and further on to this rest and keep, feeling like they're going to be ready to go for game 1, whether that's against the Yankees or in a wild card series against Boston or Cleveland. Just want to see them look like they're ready to go.
Yeah, it felt like last night of all nights too. Like you said, like I'm glad you're feeling confident because I think last night did instill a lot of confidence where they had lost 6 of 7, and then last night was like it was as close to a must win as you can get at this time of the year. And really just weird that the person that sort of delivered that sigh of relief was a Daulton Varsho. I feel like, in all honesty, it's not that he's a bad player. He's actually an extremely reliable player. And I think he's a player that, when healthy, he's very consistent. And although he's not necessarily the guy that's going to deliver the big hit, he's defensively sound. He can get on base, but he's not the guy you're like, oh yeah, he's our savior to kind of just break the streak of negativity. And he delivered in a lot of different ways. Keegan Matheson, I know, was on at Sports Center with Jay Onright and basically said, like, this is the biggest moment of the year, like, bar none. And I guess it's hard to argue with that for obvious reasons. Was that, do you think, the biggest piece of last night and like the biggest piece of activity and thing that happened last night? Because I'm thinking of one other thing that can be looked at as a positive, but I wonder if you took anything else out of that game rather than just, oh, that's the big hit that the Jays needed.
No, I mean, you're right. That was definitely the biggest moment of the game. And it's funny that you mentioned Varsho, and obviously he's been in and out of the lineup, kind of this season with some different injuries and maybe not feeling 100%. So it's funny because there was another guy who obviously hasn't been in the lineup this year for very long. It was Anthony Santander, and he had an opportunity to do the exact same thing earlier in the game. Missed a grand slam by this much, and it was crazy. It could have been one of those moments where you just can't believe that we got there and that actually happened. But Varsho steps up and takes over and does the thing, hits the grand slam. And I think you're right. Like, that was certainly the biggest moment in the game, and definitely led to them winning the game as convincingly as they did. But I think the other thing, and maybe you're alluding to this, was just the ability of the bullpen, I guess, to come in and pitch throughout the entire game. Obviously, we saw Louis Varland come in and had a great start. And then Eric Lauer, I think, was that standout guy again, who seems like all year you put him out there and he does his thing, and he doesn't seem to give up too much, and he puts the Jays in a good spot to win most times. So him coming out and giving you a couple really, really strong innings, and the Jays somehow taking like a perfect game into the 6th or 7th inning, whatever the stat was. That was unexpected considering all the pitching kind of errors that we've seen over the last few weeks, and kind of that uncertainty of what the starting pitching might look like if they are in a wild card series. So it was good to see a guy like Lauer come in and kind of settle that down a little bit, and I'm sure he'll get a chance to pitch in some important innings, come the postseason.
I think especially because now that Jose Barrios is on the IL, right? Like, we just don't know what that looks like, and he's being evaluated for inflammation in his elbow. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what my point was, and I was hoping you caught on to that, and you did, was the bullpen. Because how many times this year, especially like within the last few months, has the conversation been, you felt so confident in like a guy like Brandon Little very early in the season, and then he's kind of left you wanting more, and Jeff Hoffman's the obvious choice as well. Now, everyone was able to pretty much shut the door, and like you said, I think it was, I don't recall the specific stat, it may have been like through 6 or something that they had the perfect game going. And you're thinking, when the announcement was made the night prior that it was going to be basically a bullpen game, I think everyone was going like, that's the last thing you need a Gosman or a Yasavage, and obviously the order of pitching dictates what goes out there. But you're thinking, like, how have the stars aligned so negatively, so poorly, and yet they're like, well, like, it worked out, so don't fear. And it does feel like that clubhouse is full of guys that do believe. Like, we saw a lot of frustration out of guys like George Springer, especially on that foul ball that was called a few days prior over third base. And obviously you can make the conversation, which I think is obviously crazy, of like, the amount of people saying like the umpires are on the Yankee side. Like, I get the frustration, but like, the umpires can't score runs either. Like, the Jays have not scored runs, and that's been the problem of the bats going dry. So it obviously doesn't look great when you're getting like the Vladdy getting ejected for pointing to a horrible third strike. All of this aside, they found a way to get on base and to score runs last night. But yeah, the bullpen, I think, is almost more encouraging, just because it was such a pain point for like the last little bit, and it kind of silenced all the doubters, at least for the time being. That's kind of my thought on that.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think it gave everyone kind of a refresh look at this Jays pitching in totality, is that we still feel really good about the starters that will, eventually line up for playoff starts. And then but the question was like, who kind of is going to be your, progress through a game?
Mm-hmm.
If a starter can only go 5 or 6 innings, those that 6th, 7th, 8th inning. Well, maybe not the 8th inning as much, but 6th and 7th, especially, if you get into a position where you need a guy to go an extra inning, it's like, where are you going to kind of get those innings from? And now I think you feel good about guys like Lauer, obviously, and Braden Fisher. I think, you mentioned Brandon Little. He's going to be in the mix, of course, as well. And then, you got guys at the back of the pen like Sir Anthony Dominguez and Jeff Hoffman. Hopefully those guys are pitching at their best of the year, as we get to those most important games. So it just gives you a better view of how the Jays can handle some of the better teams in the AL. And yeah, but I think you hit right on it. Is the offense is going to be the most important part of this playoff run for the Jays, because no matter what the pitching does, you can't win games. Or well, you could, I guess, but you're probably not going to win many 2-1 or 1-0 games if you're the Jays. They're not really set up to win those type of games. I think you'll have really good success if you can get 4 or 5 runs consistently enough in the playoffs, and I think that's a pretty reasonable number. We're not asking for a crazy output every night. It's just about, like you said, getting on base, taking advantage of opportunities. This year they've played a lot of small ball too, so it's just, if they're able to be consistent enough like they have all season and not kind of run into another 2 or 3 game set where they can't get more than a run or two, then they should look like they're in good position, because it seems like things are at least moving in the right direction after a pretty bad week of things looking like it was going to be pretty chaotic.
Oh yeah. And it still looks like that. I mean, you said it earlier, it's probably like a 2 of 3 situation. If the Jays can take the magic number is technically 3, but you hope that the Orioles can get 1 this in New York this weekend. The Jays can win 2, clean things up. They obviously have the tiebreaker right now due to the Jays, so that's a positive. But I think that's not confident if you go in just like hoping that things even out and you just sneak the AL East standings by that metric. Just to the point of obviously important to score runs, and the Jays can technically win with low scoring because the starting pitching has been pretty solid all year. Sportsnet stats did have this stat, I believe, after the win last night, that the Blue Jays improved to 69-4 when scoring 5 or more runs this season. It's not a crazy stat because, you're going to score more than 5 runs. Chances are you're going to win the game. But I think that just is the point of, if you can just generate runs, like you can, like the starting pitching likely is going to hold you to, a short amount of runs on the other side of the ball. And it's just a matter of the Jays playing defense. They've played pretty solid defense all year. They have the guys to make the plays. Now, Bichette obviously is the major wild card as to when does he come back. And you have Santander that hopefully can kind of continue the bats. I don't know how confident I feel in him, but ultimately, he's coming back late, and you're glad to see him getting reps before the playoffs. I think it's important to get back into game shape. How do you feel about the Jays just like in the AL picture in general in the playoffs? Because I'd be a lot more concerned if we're playing the likes of the Brewers and the Padres and the Dodgers. So I feel like we're in a better spot in the AL.
Yeah, I would agree for sure. I think this year the American League has certainly been the weaker half of the MLB, and I think not to say there aren't some great teams there, but I think there's a lot of teams kind of in a similar position as the Jays, where they have a good lineup, but maybe their bullpen is not as strong, or they're not as confident in their starting pitching group, or their defense, hasn't been as good. We saw Boston, and we've seen the Yankees, have issues on the field as well. So I feel pretty good. Obviously we still don't know where the Jays are going to line up and who they're going to have to face, whether that's in a wild card series or in a division series. But I think when you look at teams like Boston and Cleveland, and the Tigers, even if things got crazy and they ended up playing them early, I think you feel pretty good against teams like that. The Yankees, just because of the strength of their lineup, they do scare me probably the most of any team in the AL. But I still think the Jays are well equipped to be able to handle them. If their starters can go out, give you good appearances, and then you have a good run from your bullpen, and your lineup can hit a little bit, you can beat a team like the Yankees. I think they're not an unbeatable force in the American League, even though they've been somewhat on a hot streak, and obviously they represented the league last year in the World Series. But I think this year it's a little bit different, and I would give the Jays a good shot in a series against the Yankees. So I think you're right. Like as long as their matchups are okay and they're able to line up their pitching staff the way they want to, obviously a division series appearance first would help that. as opposed to having to go through the wild card. But
Mm-hmm.
but as it stands, yeah, I definitely I wouldn't be too scared by too many of the opponents that we might see in the American League playoffs. So hopefully that
Yeah.
leads for something good.
Especially considering, I think, the way that the AL's kind of just played out, like, especially with Detroit. I mean, we probably won't see a team like that unless, like you said, maybe they do completely fall off the rails. I mean, they played Cleveland the past couple days. They did win last night, but to have like a 15 and a half game lead up on Cleveland earlier in the season and now basically be tied for the division lead is like unfathomable. So it's a lot worse in other divisions of the AL. So I guess that's a positive that Jays fans can take away, but it doesn't feel like there's a clear cut number one outside of maybe the Jays. And yet when you look at like some of the odds, and I mean all season just power rankings and things like that, like I feel like Toronto hasn't gotten the respect that they deserved. And I guess that's probably maybe like John Schneider, maybe doesn't care. Maybe the whole team doesn't care about that. Probably shouldn't. But
Yeah.
maybe he's showing them like, yo, like look at the fact that they've been number one in the AL for a pretty considerable amount of time. And yet it does feel like other teams, like, at one point I think Houston was ranked higher than them. And now Houston might not even make the playoffs. Like there's just a lot of change in the AL. And I think that's kind of like, hey, the Jays might not be in the best position right now in terms of how they've played, but take solace in the fact that the AL doesn't seem to have like a clear-cut favorite outside of maybe them. So I think this is the chance. This is a year.
Yeah, and I think one thing with the Jays too is I think they've kind of been overshadowed recently by the Tigers' collapse, and I think by the rise of the Seattle Mariners and Cal Raleigh and everything that he's been doing. So I mean, there's definitely been. I mean, I think you're right on in terms of people, especially national media, or maybe giving the Jays a little bit disrespect in terms of maybe they're waiting for them to kind of have a week like this where they don't look as strong, and then they can say, well, that's why we didn't have them as high, maybe in the odds or in some of their rankings. But it seems like every time the Jays face a little bit of adversity, they're able to kind of pick it back up and at least make it right for a small time. So if they're able to do that this weekend and make it look like it's looked earlier on in the summer, and as they've continued on this rise, they should be in a good spot going into the playoffs, and hopefully they'll have a little bit of momentum to continue to carry them like we've seen all summer. So
yeah, absolutely. Just the last one I had on the Jays, unless there's anything else kind of that we've missed. Like I think we asked this question earlier, maybe before the summer, and we took our break, but when the Jays were kind of making their rise, there was questions about whether their comparisons to 2015. Like, do you feel like there's a lot of comparisons of this team, or is it just a different iteration that also has the chance of winning the division?
I mean, there are certainly some comparisons. I mean, you can make the comparison like with the Bieber and the Price, bringing in a guy like that to come in and hypothetically, the thought was Bieber would be the game one starter. I don't think that's the case anymore, but there's definitely some similarities there. Some of the offense kind of looks kind of similar. You got the big hitters. You got guys like Bo and Vladdy and Varsho can hit the ball. Like kind of maybe not as similar, but in the same vein of Edwin and Jose and Donaldson back in the day. So there are definitely some comparisons, and I think having the biggest thing with for me at least going into the playoffs is going to be the guys at the bottom of the lineup. The Straws, the Lucases, Ernie Clement is going to be huge. You're going to need Davis Schneider's bat, hopefully at some point to hit a clutch home run or something along those lines. So if the rest of the team can come together and become a strong cohesive group like we saw in 2015 when that team just played so well, complemented each other in all areas, it felt like, and we're really on some sort of high where they almost weren't going to be denied until the Royals showed up. So it was one thing that we'll see this year in terms of a team coming together at the right time and seemingly have everything that they need. The Bo Bichette injury obviously is going to be huge, and hopefully he can get on the field in some capacity once we do get to the playoffs. But right now it's looking like it'll be hard to depend on him to be at least be the Bo Bichette that we know. So it'll take guys like Vladdy and Varsho and Santander to show up and hopefully provide some of that offense that we are used to seeing from Bichette.
Yeah, it's the bottom of the lineup's good because it's a good point, because I actually feel pretty confident with the guys that are at the bottom. Like Nathan Lucas has been pretty consistent all year. I feel like when he comes up to bat, there's no even though maybe he's in the 7, 8, 9 spot, you're kind of thinking like there's no like concern here. For some reason, he just instills confidence. Miles Straw's been like a great jack of all trades almost all year. He obviously run pretty quickly, and that's going to be really important. Schneider, his bat has kind of made rounds. Obviously, start of the year, you didn't see much of it. They brought him back up, and he's kind of made the most of his opportunity. And then Addison Barger's a guy where you're like, this guy kind of came out of nowhere, and he didn't. Obviously, he was a prospect, and last year he did play some games, but didn't really make the most of his opportunity. And this year, he's in that top, maybe to the 2 spot, right? And you need that kind of bat at the top of the lineup, and hopefully he can continue that trend. And his defense as well. He's made some pretty incredible plays at third or even right field, where he hasn't had a chance to play until this year. I think he's pretty new to the outfield. So I'm excited to just kind of see what the youth brings. And like these utility guys are actually probably going to factor in, like you said, a lot more than you probably would have expected. But I feel almost better about these guys than maybe the 2015 team. Although I'll be quite honest, I can't think of any. Like Darwin Barney's a guy I think of, and I loved him, but I don't know. I can't think of maybe a lot of them, like the Ryan Goins. But I do feel like there's a lot of great at-bats and defense at the bottom of the lineup that we can look forward to.
Yeah, and I think another point that just kind of popped in my head as you were going through some of those guys is like you talk about a Barger, Lucas, Andres Jimenez. Another consistent pattern throughout all those guys is they're left-handed bats. And the Jays have not typically had a ton of extra lefties that can come in, give you a different matchup, a guy that you are pretty confident in to get on base, whether that's through a walk or through a single, or even we saw Lucas hit a triple the other day. Like that's these guys can contribute in different ways and can help the offense. And yeah, it just like it gives you a different look than what I feel like we've seen recently in the past. And maybe that's something that helps propel them, to another level they haven't been able to reach, obviously in years past too. So yeah, it should be really fun to watch. And I'm excited to see how all these guys really contribute and what it looks like if the Jays are able to have success in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. So a ton to talk about. By this time next week, we'll have our answer, whether they are the division leaders or whether they're playing in the wild card. They might even be
They could be
finished.
Done.
Yeah, it might be done.
Crazy. Yeah.
It is nuts because the Jays tickets did go on sale yesterday for playoffs. I was able to get 4 tickets to the ALDS game 2.
Nice.
Just sick.
That's awesome.
If they get there, right? Like it's a TBD, and I'm like, I don't like the signs of that. Like, I would like a date, please.
It's like a different way of, maybe you're not a gambler, but it's like a different way of betting on the Jays to win in the wild card or win this weekend. So that's
exactly. So it's a positive. But yeah, looking at those dates and seeing like, I think it was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday would be like the wild card series. You're like, like by the time we record, we could be real happy. We could be real sad. Like, who knows? Maybe we just take this and run with it and be happy for this weekend. So I think it's 7:07 tonight at home, and Shane Bieber, as we talked about, he is on the mound, and then Trey Savage tomorrow. So I actually feel pretty good with the game in their hands. Those are guys that have been contributing. So we'll chat more about it next week. I think we can probably move on to NFL. We did see Thursday night, last night, an NFC West battle between, and that division has actually been the best division so far in football, which I don't think is something that you can say looking into that division, or at least looking into the NFL going into it, between the Arizona Cardinals and the Seattle Seahawks. There we go. Honestly, they're two teams that kind of fit for Thursday night football for me. I don't know why. I just don't love either style. I know there's a little bit more offensive excitement on the Cardinal side, but the Seattle Seahawks are a very defensive-minded team with Mike McDonald at the helm. Any takeaways from yesterday? Anything that you were like, oh, this is fun to watch? Like, I know the Marvin Harrison Jr. story is kind of the biggest takeaway, is, will he, won't he? But any of these teams scare you? Any like thoughts from last night's game?
I think the Seattle Seahawks could be something there. I mean, like, I'm not here to say they're going to win the NFC or that they're even going to win their division. They've got, at least for me, I think the Niners are a great team too. And for me, the Rams, even though they're not 3-0 like those other two teams, they're a really good team too. And I think for me, they're still kind of my favorite to win that division.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, the more we continue to see Sam Darnold play with, teams that aren't the Jets and the Panthers, teams that have some serious talent and can, obviously have serious coaches as well. Like he keeps growing on me. It seems like every start. And there were points last night where, yeah, there was some interesting, stuff happening in the fourth quarter. Obviously, we saw Seahawks kicker Jason Myers missed that kick that gave the Cardinals a bit of a chance to storm back, but it felt like there was almost never it never felt like it was really in doubt for me. Like I felt like the Seahawks, even with 35 seconds left on the clock, I mean, I didn't really feel this way until we saw that weird kickoff issue where
Yeah.
I think it was Ryland couldn't even get it to the landing zone. Gives the Seahawks an opportunity to get a little bit of better field position, and obviously they take it from there, and Myers is able to get some redemption. So I mean, credit to the Seahawks for not kind of giving up on that moment and being able to push through. And again, it's just Darnold seems to have the ability to lead a squad when he has the talent around him, and maybe it's his confidence level. Maybe there has been some change in his, whether that's just what he's been doing off the field or what he's been doing on the field with different groups. I just think that there's something different about this guy now that he is in a good position to succeed. And like I said, I mean, at this point, I don't think how you can bet against them to at least not be in the playoff hunt. Like they'll be there, week 17, week 18, and if they're able to get in, their defense is one too that I wouldn't want to necessarily face in a playoff situation. Yeah. So yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about those Seahawks and not so good about those Cardinals. I would say I'm not going to pile on too much, but
no,
yeah, they've got more issues than just their wide receiver and quarterback connection there. I think there's a little bit more work for Jonathan Gannon and that group to do for the Cardinals.
Yeah. I think it's his third year on the job too. Obviously, James Conner goes down. He's out for the season. That's probably huge for them. Well, not probably. It is very huge for them with that offense, right? Kyler Murray can move around, but I think there's a lot of question marks now. Is like, is he a guy that can obviously take you past where they've been? They haven't been a team. They've shown flashes, and I know the past couple of years they very clearly have decided we're going to sort of be bottom of the barrel to try and build our way up. They bring in Marvin Harrison Jr. and obviously looks like he's got a lot of talent, but the biggest question mark is the basics, is making catches. And hopefully you think for a guy like him, he's got all the talent in the world. He had a great touchdown catch yesterday, but maybe it's just like the yips. Maybe it's just something you shake off. I don't really know. I'm not going to just sit here and say like, I know what it's like to play there and the pressure that's on. And, obviously in prime time or when things get shown on the highlights and you see a very easy catch drop, you're thinking, okay, like I could do that. Maybe not. Like maybe it's just, just a bad moment. Derrick Henry is one of the best running backs we've ever seen. And look at how his season's played out so far. So I think that small piece of it is probably minor. I think there's not a lot of chances in the NFL. So I don't know how this team plays out. But you know what? I like the take of Sam Darnold. I think just to pivot back to the Seahawks is I still feel a little bit like iffy on him. And I think just his full career resume is still like, the question mark was obviously he had a pretty fantastic year last year to the final 2 or 3 games of the season. But we know that Kevin O'Connell is obviously a quarterback whisperer. Mike McDonald seems to have him playing correctly. I can't name their offensive coordinator off the top of my head, but do you have it? Maybe you pull it up. Yeah, but
I will find it.
Yeah. So I think with the defense, obviously I don't know if it's easier to retool an offense or defense. I think it depends on the coach and the system, but it does feel like he just needs to do the bare minimum. We talked about it with the Toronto Blue Jays. Who do you got?
It's Clint Kubiak, son of the former coach Gary Kubiak. Yeah.
I did have it somewhere in my mind and I could never place it. So thank you for pulling that up. We talked about it, different sport, but the Blue Jays, sometimes they need runs to be successful. It does feel like with Seattle, you can kind of get 18 to 20 points and you can probably win with the defense that's on the other side of the ball. So I didn't watch a ton of it last night. I did see a bit of the comeback for the Cardinals, which is encouraging. But yeah, you know what? If they can make it almost is like the Bucks from a few years ago, where like they were trouble for teams. They would just sneak in, they would win their division because they had a pretty weak division, and they go ahead and beat the Eagles. And obviously, a few years ago with Tom Brady, they win. But they're kind of a pesky team that won't go away. It may seem like maybe different structure, but the Seahawks could be just like a pesky team that you just don't want to face maybe in the wild card round or the first round. So I don't hate that.
Yeah. No, and I think you're right. A lot of it has to do with, continuity and consistency. In the NFL especially, I think people get a little bit of a hesitation to go with a team and using Baker Mayfield and the Bucs is a
Yeah.
great example. It's like when a quarterback's kind of moved around a little bit and it hasn't had success, even when you see a little bit of that hope and that glimmer of success there, it's hard to kind of see that continuing forward because you have this track record that people want to believe in so badly. But realistically, a lot of that has to do with situation and where that quarterback maybe is in his development. So you take a guy like Darnold, who last year you brought it up, had a fantastic season. I think if he had had a better playoff game with the Vikings, people would be looking at him as like, oh, he's had a great season. He had a good playoff game, even if they had lost. He's ready to kind of take this leap, and he looks like he's doing that. But because they were eliminated last year in quite the fashion, I think people look at him and say, well, he's maybe still not a big game quarterback, or he's not able to take a team the distance. But he'll get another shot this year, I think, to take the Seahawks as far as he can. And they weren't a bad team with Geno Smith the last couple of years, so I think people are missing out on the fact that it's not just Darnold. There's more to a team than its quarterback. And I think, like you said, Mike McDonald and his coaching staff seem to have them playing really well to start the season. If they can keep growing on that and build some of that consistency with Darnold behind center, then they're going to look pretty good as we get to the later weeks in the year and maybe going into the playoffs. So I'm excited to see this Seattle team continue to play. Yeah.
Is it way too early to suggest that the Vikings might have like some regrets not signing Darnold? Like I do think it's a little early, but it's been a weird year for the Vikings, who are 2-1. Let's preface it by saying that, but they haven't won confidently, other than the obviously the dismantling of the Bengals last week. But like you did it with Carson Wentz, is that an anomaly? Are you playing a Bengals defense who obviously is improved but was horrendous last year, who doesn't have Joe Burrow? Like JJ McCarthy hasn't really proven that he's a number one. He's played like 3 games. I understand 2 games even, but like even the 2 games even the game that he won, he had to like storm back against the Bears late. Is it too early? Should we just not even have the conversation? Or do you think there's worth like, maybe Sam Darnold is just out to prove that he should have been signed there?
Yeah, I think you're right. Like it's maybe a little bit too early for the Vikings to have regret because, like you said, they're still in a good position.
Sure.
We know they have a pretty serviceable guy in Carson Wentz there, and when McCarthy's able to come back, they'll be happy to give him another shot. And I'm sure they're hoping that he just continues to grow and get better with more opportunity. But I'm sure Darnold, like you said, is out to get. Maybe not out to get the Vikings specifically, but out to prove. He's still trying to prove to the rest of the league and maybe to himself or to whoever it is, that whatever's helping him, motivate for the season, that he wants to show that he's, a capable, maybe top, I don't know what you want to say. Like he could be a top 15, top 10 quarterback if he continues to have, another fantastic season. If he shows that he's more than a game manager, that he knows how to move the ball. And like I said, if he's able to somehow get to another playoffs and actually find some success, people will look at him in a much different way, and he could be set up long term. He's still a pretty young quarterback. Obviously, he's been around a little bit on some teams where he hasn't had the opportunity to play with some real talent. But now that he's there, maybe he looks at Seattle as a longer term place and wants to kind of hang around and continue to make waves, on teams where they've just been looking for that guy to kind of get you to the next year.
Yeah, that's true. You said young, and you're right. Actually, for some reason, you think Sam Darnold's like 35. He's 28 years old. And he's just like, it's actually insane to think about because I think in football of all sports, because like, I don't know, you can be maybe Tom Brady and the Aaron Rodgers of the world and even the Drew Brees suggest that you can play probably till you're 40 as a quarterback. It might not always be the case, but I do think you have a little bit more runway as a quarterback. But Baker Mayfield is older than Sam Darnold. And for some reason, I would have thought Baker Mayfield was younger, and he's 30, still pretty young. But like those guys that have moved around a lot, you just assume because they've been in 4 or 5 uniforms, or maybe 3 or 4, that they're old and this is their last years. But like Sam Darnold, of all people, has a lot of still growth in him and maybe an opportunity to prove, like we were just discussing, hey, I can be that guy. Look how Baker signed his deal, and look at the Bucs, who are now 3-0 and Super Bowl contenders in some people's eyes. So yeah, good conversation. I don't hate it. I don't know if you have had a chance to look at the slate for week 4, but we did this last week. Is there a game that kind of stands out to you, 2 games that stand out to you, just a general matchup that you're kind of looking forward to this coming Sunday?
Well, I think like most people, I'm really excited to watch the Packers and the Cowboys.
Oh
I think
yeah.
that's on Sunday Night Football. That's going
No.
to be a fantastic, just kind of spectacle. I don't know what to expect much from the game. Obviously with the
Yeah.
Cowboys now missing CeeDee Lamb, like I expect their offense maybe to take a step back, and the Packers have a great defense. So I mean, maybe that game gets out of hand, but I think just the spectacle of seeing Micah Parsons down on the sidelines. We'll
Mm-hmm.
know Jerry Jones will be lurking somewhere. The game's going to be in Dallas. So we know that it's going to be a fun environment for the fans as well. Like I'm sure they'll be giving it to him, and he'll probably want to give it right back. We saw him a couple weeks ago. I think it was after a Thursday night game where they were what were they chanting? Thank you, Jerry. I think to Micah, and he was
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. They
egging
were.
on the fans. Like I expect to see something along those lines as well, and that should make it really fun. Even if the football on the field's maybe not as good, but in terms of the rest of the week, I mean the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens going at it again this weekend. That should be a fun game at Arrowhead, and we've seen those teams go head to head, and there's always some fireworks. It feels like when you get Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson
Oh yeah.
facing off. So I'm excited to watch that. But yeah, there's a few sneaky games I think on the schedule. Another one that comes to mind is the Eagles and Bucks.
Yeah.
We talked about Baker Mayfield. He's been off to a fantastic 3-0 start with the Buccaneers. So I mean, them going up against the Super Bowl champs. I think they're at home. I think that game is in Tampa, so that should be
Yeah.
again another fun matchup to see. Kind of how things shake out with some of these top teams facing off against each other this year. So yeah, it's quite a few. I think. What about yourself?
There is a lot. I think the later half of the Sunday is going to look a little better because like there's that Bucks Eagles game. They faced off a lot in the playoffs the past couple of years. The Bucks look rejuvenated with Baker Mayfield at the helm. Their offense, I know Mike Evans is going to be out for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Ekbuka is a great young wide receiver, and I feel like he might be banged up because there was already discussions of him playing in certain games, but he's looked incredible so far. He might be the offensive rookie of the year if things continue to pace out the way they have. And the Eagles are just winning in ways that people kind of expect, but non-traditional football. Like Jalen Hurts doesn't have to throw the ball for them to win, but he can throw the ball if they win. And the defense is obviously pretty solid as well. So that game, I think, is more obvious. The 2-3-0 teams that are going against each other, obviously one's going to remain. I think either way, unless a team gets blown out, both of those teams are going to be fine heading into week 5. I do think fraud alert might be the Colts-Rams. I think that might be a fraud alert game. Like, I just do not trust Indianapolis, and I don't have any ill will towards them because they've been sort of middle of the pack the past little bit, and they've yet again, you go into this season and you think you have a quarterback who's pretty much unproven or near the end of their career where they've been proven in the past. And let's fit all the other pieces and just kind of, he'll be the glue in the middle. We have to tape the quarterback to a nice, pristine, like whatever you're looking for. So that's interesting to see if Daniel Jones is who we think he is after he's proven the first 3 games has been a solid quarterback. The team is great. And the Rams, like we discussed, they should be a great team. I don't know why. Sean McVay's the one thing where you're like, he's always good. Like he's always going to get the most out of his team. I'm curious to see how they handle the Colts. I think that's going to be the sneaky game of the week where we might see a blowout, or we just might see maybe we see a great game. I'm looking forward to what that game actually brings. But yeah, that the Ravens Chiefs game, one team's in trouble. Like whatever team loses is in big trouble. And like, who would have thought that A, both these teams would be 1-2, but B, that one of them would be 1-3 to start the year. Like it's a wild fact after like one of these teams is likely to not make the playoffs. I would like to think. I don't know. Maybe that's crazy to say.
No, I mean, I don't think it's crazy. I mean, I don't have a stat in front of me, but I would imagine that teams that start the year 1-3, their percentage to make the playoffs is probably pretty low. Like, I don't imagine there's too many teams that come back from that. But we know that both of these teams, if there were going to be any, it's probably going to be, one of these two teams, or if like a Buffalo started 1-3 somehow, like people would feel pretty good about their chances to come back. But yeah, I'm super excited to watch just the desperation because I think you'll see both of these teams give it their best. It'll almost feel like a quasi playoff game in that way that neither of these teams will want to have to crawl their way back from a 1-3 start. So I think that's a great shout there for sure. And in terms of the Colts Rams, I think you might be onto something. And there, I don't know about a blowout, but I think it could be a shootout for sure, where you might see
Yes.
this game might be up in the high 50s, 60s in terms of total points, because we know that obviously Matthew Stafford can sling it, but we know that Daniel Jones and that offense, with the Colts and Jonathan Taylor running, behind him, they look really good and really strong. So I think, there's definitely an opportunity to see some points in that game. So it should be fun to watch.
Should be fun to watch. Yeah, and then just like we've gotten some great Monday night games to start the season, and I don't know if that trend's going to continue this week because you have the Dolphins or the Jets at the Dolphins and the Bengals at the Broncos. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Monday night, and this is disappointing. But I don't know if a lot of fantasy football weeks are going to be affected by that matchup because I don't really know who's involved there. But in any case, it's not the best setup. What can you do? Any other thoughts in the NFL, or do you want to? We can kind of move on here, I guess.
No, I mean, I think just to speak on those Monday night games, I think the Bengals Broncos game has the potential to be a decent game. But that depends on the Bengals showing up and being able to do anything offensively, which we know they weren't able to do last week against the Vikings. So I think, the Broncos, it might be a get right game for them. Because I feel like they've definitely been, people have had them as kind of a playoff favorite, it feels like, this year. But yeah, I mean, they haven't started like one. I think you're going to see maybe Bo Nix and that group of guys kind of maybe come together and try to beat the Bengals. And you might see them maybe try to put a few points up on them as well and try to kind of get back. And because we know that defense is really good and they shouldn't have any problems really stopping this Bengals team without Joe Burrow. So we should see there might be just some interesting storylines coming in and out of that game. But you're right, like the Jets-Dolphins game should just be an absolute snore fest. I can't imagine that's going to be anything entertaining for people to watch. So
that has Thursday written all over it. I don't know what the schedule makers were thinking. Like, oh, this will be a great, like maybe the Jets could have had a good year with a new coach, and maybe Justin Fields does something. I know he's injured, but it just like what potential would that have had on a Monday? It doesn't. Maybe they tried to sneak it behind the Bengals Broncos, right? To be like, oh, you won't even notice. Okay. Talking myself into it. I don't know. I'm not a fan.
You're right. It's like someone had to stand up and say, hey, we already got a Monday night game. Yeah. Let's get this one off prime time.
I think it's the first one. So you got to watch an hour of that, and then you can just transition directly over to the orange game, basically.
There you go. Yeah.
Cool. Before we get to just touching on a bit of the Ryder Cup, just real quick, I know there's not a ton of discussions and storylines, but there have been NHL training camps and preseason games. Has there been anything that you feel we need to discuss? There's been a couple of really brutal injuries. Like, that's obviously not something we have to get fully into, but has there been anything that you've noticed that like you're looking forward to this year, or has there been any news? Like, obviously the Leafs have played pretty decently so far. We have Easton Cowan maybe in the mix. We can get into that, but is there anything else that kind of has caught your eye from the NHL start of the preseason thus far?
No, I mean, I think you hit it on the head. It's been the injury bug a little bit. We saw, unfortunately, Alexander Barkov. It looks like he's going to be out quite a while for the Panthers with what was a practice injury, basically, like not even in a preseason game, which is disappointing. But that's going to be something for them to definitely keep an eye on, and that could change the entire scope of the Eastern Conference this season, which is incredible to think about. But you got to think, regardless of what the Panthers might be able to do, given some extra money, if Barkov is truly out for the entire season, I still can't imagine that team is going to be as good as they could be with him in the lineup. So I think that's going to be something to watch and something for, especially the Atlantic Division. It could shake up, what people's projections are coming out of that division and what the playoff situation might look like for the Panthers especially. But teams like Toronto and Ottawa and Tampa Bay and Montreal even will look to take advantage and try to, obviously the Leafs won the division last year, but they'll try to do that again this year. And people would have expected it to be more difficult without Mitch Marner, but maybe it might not be as hard as it seems, just because of the unfortunate, bad luck that's happening there down in Florida. So you hate to see it, but in terms of anything else, I mean, I think just kind of waiting for it to get going. I think it feels like preseason and some of these training camps, it is a little bit difficult to gauge, and especially before final rosters are revealed, like we don't really know some of the young rookies or prospects that are going to make some of these teams. So, once we kind of get through the preseason and see what the regular season is going to look like, it's going to be, I think, a hell of a season for the NHL.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And pardon me. I followed the Leafs a little bit more than I have in preseasons past. I've been dialed in as much as possible, and it feels like looking and watching Craig Berube's mannerisms and how he's been playing his team. We don't have to get super invested in preseason. I know there's only so much you can gauge out of it, but it does feel like, the lines are going to look a little bit different. There's been all this discussion of how do you replace 100 points from Mitch Marner, which I'm not sure. Like, I know that has to be sort of the storyline that you run with, but ultimately, if the whole concept of the Leafs has been what they do in the playoffs, does it really matter what the regular season looks like? We don't need to replace 100 points. I think you just need to get some offense. You need to get some more responsibility on the back end and hopefully push towards anywhere in the playoffs, because as the Panthers have proven, you make the playoffs somehow, even if you stumble in, good things can happen. Do you think Easton Cowan, if you had to put a percentage on it, do you think Easton Cowan makes the lineup, come October 8th?
You know what? I actually would give it like a. I'm gonna be more conservative. I'm gonna be more positive on this. Like, I'm gonna say there's like a 60% chance that he makes the team out of camp.
Okay.
More so than his play, which I think has been pretty good in the preseason. It's just the way that Craig Berube has been talking about him. I think he seems really happy with him. I think he sees the progression that he's taken as a prospect. Obviously, he's been phenomenal in the junior level, and he projects to be a great NHL player. But you just don't know how much time he's going to need. I'm not saying it's out of the question that he's going to play in the American Hockey League this year at some point, but I think it's fair to say that he's probably earned the right to get a good look going forward. And like you said, you can't replace Mitch Marner and what he's been able to do, but you put together a couple skilled players. We know Michelli's going to help in some way. We know Cowan should eventually be able to help in some way. And we know that the guys they brought in to kind of be in the bottom six, like Dakota Joshua and Pizzetta and Nick Wall, like these guys are going to be, they're going to be part of why the Leafs continue to be a good team this year. And I think the one thing that I think is going to be the most important almost is hopefully, if we do see some growth from that bottom six, maybe it takes a little bit of pressure off the guys at the top of the group, and they don't feel like they got to be the one scoring every goal, and it doesn't create this kind of not necessarily controversy, but last year was definitely a talking point that the bottom six was struggling, especially when it came to putting together some offense in the playoffs. They just weren't able to contribute as much. And we saw Scott Lawton in the preseason rip a couple goals in the first period. If you can get guys like that to contribute more offensively, especially after last year, it should really help them going forward and just balance out the lineup a little bit, especially when a guy like Mitch isn't kind of in the lineup to start. I'm interested to hear what you think, Alex, about Cowan, and I wonder too what you project in terms of that top six. Who do you see playing with Matthews and Matthew Nyes there?
I think Domi might be the likeliest to start the year there as long as he's healthy. And it's been interesting because I always take Craig Berube as a guy who's probably going to be a little bit more, he's going to say less, but like he also isn't afraid to share what's on his mind. Because ultimately I don't think he's like a guy that's going to just play chess games with the media. He's like, hey, like if I need you, I need you. If I don't, I don't. Like it doesn't matter to me. But yesterday, prior to their third preseason game, he was pretty honest about what some of the lines he's put out there, what he thinks they can do and what he's looking forward to watching. One of them being that first line yesterday with Lorenz, Lawton, and Easton Cowan on the right. And my God, like I know it's preseason, but Montreal did put some pretty good lines together. And that line generated, I think, 4 goals, possibly 4 out of the 7, right? Yeah. And so a lot of production there. Now, obviously, that's not going to be a trend. Like we saw Pontus Holmberg score like 3 goals in 4 games last year. And, that's not to be expected all year. But I think that could be an interesting line. Now, ultimately, are you getting the most out of Cowan if he starts the year on the 4th line? Probably not. But there's a lot of different reasons to bring him up if you're going to decide to move a guy like Nick Robertson. Like, I don't think you can have both those guys in the lineup. It doesn't feel like Robertson is, maybe it's unfair. Maybe he's not getting the most opportunity. And look, I think it's just the preseason for him. I think it's a waste of time. And I know that's silly to say, but we've seen what he can do in the preseason. He's going to score goals against weaker competition. It's can he produce in when the times that it matters, aka even just the beginning of the season. So I do think Domi starts with the Nyes and a Matthews, and I do think Michelli, Nick Waugh, and Dakota Joshua actually might start together on the third line to start the year. And I think I don't think Berube mentioned that. He was interested to see what that line does. They weren't paired together yesterday, and Nick Y isn't skating, or isn't playing yet. I think he's been practicing here and there, but he's not 100%. He has some great plays in the training camp, though, from what I watched. All that to say, I think he's probably just going to try a mix of some of these new guys and see what happens. And I think it's a little bit more reliable. Hey, Domi's got a lot of opportunity. He's been with these guys before and had success. So I think he maybe starts on the first line there. I think it's good problems to have. And I think because it's Toronto, we're talking about it. But I think it's a good problem to have. And we'll see who gets kind of shipped out.
Yeah, no, you make some really good points there, especially about I do like the idea of Easton Cowan's kind of like your Nick Robertson, not necessarily a replacement, but for the time being, you keep Robertson around, obviously, and then Easton Cowan kind of becomes like your black ace, kind of if a guy gets hurt or you needed a little bit of offense, you can bring him up, maybe insert him into the lineup, and he can give you something. But and I like the idea that Craig Berube is kind of rewarding Bobby McMahon for his his flexibility over the last few seasons. It seems like he might get a chance at that second line spot to start the year as well. And even when bringing in a skilled player like Michelli, it's great to see a guy like McMahon kind of get rewarded for his play the last couple seasons as well. So it should be a really fun and interesting Leaf season. Probably one of the more interesting ones we've seen in terms of trying to see what this team is actually going to look like compared to years past, where it felt like it was maybe just too familiar, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how they play and what the lineups look like from day to day. And like you said, it's going to be fun.
Yeah, pumped. We could probably wrap things up just really briefly with the Ryder Cup. Talked a little off air. It's pretty exciting. I like to follow golf. I like to follow probably more majors than I do some of the less intriguing events to some people. I do find that the Ryder Cup scoring is still a little confusing. I wish they kind of simplified it, maybe for like a basic casual fan. Maybe that's just a me problem, but it's very intriguing. Now, this year they are at Bethpage Black in New York on Long Island. And thus far, I believe Europe's up 3-1 after the first round. And that's interesting because obviously the biggest takeaway being the biggest thing for the U.S. versus Europe seems to be winning on the opponent's soil. And it seems like obviously after one round, Europe has that opportunity. What do you think of the atmosphere? You're saying you're really enjoying what you saw this morning, and like, what do you think plays out? Any storylines you wanted to take away so far?
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. First off, the environment looked amazing there at Bethpage. I think I saw earlier this morning, as early as 7 a.m., they had, crowds were packed and the grandstands were excited and loud and ready for especially the American players to come out and tee off. And I think Bryson DeChambeau was the first one to tee off for the Americans and gave them quite a show. So I'm glad to see that it's getting off to a start. I'm glad it's getting kind of a good run. It feels like the Ryder Cup's always a big event, but it feels like this year especially there seems to be like an extra kind of oomph to it. I don't know if that's just the international flair, or if it's just having it in New York, or there could be many reasons for it. But yeah, it's always a fun event. And I think you're right. Having an event with kind of different scoring capacities in terms of you're playing different events kind of all wrapped into one certainly kind of gives people, they kind of pick and choose maybe what day. Obviously today, the first day, is a great day because you get the kind of doubles, the 2-on-2 matchups throughout the day, and people love to see the best players kind of going at it in singles, which I think is usually at the end of the tournament. So it's a couple of different looks depending on what you like in golf. And I think, like you said, winning on the opponent's soil, I think most of these tournaments typically go the way of the home team. So I think people would have expected the U.S. to come out firing, and for them to be down after the first session was definitely something that I don't think people were expecting as much. But I know that the Americans have some of the best players in the world too, and I'm sure they'll come out firing, in the afternoon and later tomorrow and into Sunday as well. So I think the Americans were pretty heavily favored as well in this in the event. So if the Europeans can come out, it seems like that would be a pretty big upset for European golf fans. And if anything, it just will create or continue to create a great rivalry between here domestically and the guys across the pond. It's always fun to watch the antics and watch them kind of trash talk a little bit and go back and forth. So I know everyone in golf and especially the players are super excited to be a part of the Ryder Cup this year.
Big time. Would you say that, at least for you, is this like, what would you have how would it rank the Ryder Cup to one of your favorite events in golf? Like, do you still think some of the majors are up there, i.e. like the Masters, or do you think that this holds like a top 3 position, maybe for more of a personal level? Because I know it's subjective.
No, I mean, I think you're right on it. Like for me, I think I would put any of the 4 majors probably above the Ryder Cup,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
I would probably, outside of like the Canadian Open, which obviously is closer to us, I think the Ryder Cup is like right there. It's probably above like the FedEx playoffs or any of their other signature events. Like I think it just because of that different look and the team aspect of it all, like it just gives you that, especially after the conclusion of the rest of the season. It's just that fun, kind of more exciting, almost like not like a frat boy event, but like we see a lot of cool social media content and stuff comes out of it, and they get the uniforms going, so it's like almost more of a fun, not necessarily more casual, but just like a different type of style where these guys can come out, maybe show a little bit more of emotion, play together as a group, and kind of go back and forth and give you some of that. So I think it definitely, like I said, it's up there in terms of the rest of the golf's greatest tournaments, but I think you can't get any better than a major tournament, especially on like a Sunday with some of the best players involved, and the competition is a little bit stronger than maybe what you're going to see in the Ryder Cup. These guys care and they want to win for their continent, I guess, or their country on the American side, but I think it's still kind of more fun for them, and I think they still just enjoy the opportunity. And there's been some talk about getting paid or not and all that stuff this week, so it's just not quite the same intensity that I think you'd see on a major tournament field. So
yeah, that's actually fair. I think there's a lot of, especially as a Canadian, maybe it doesn't hit the same. Like if we watched the Four Nations and we were like, the Four Nations for us in hockey was like, I haven't really been. We obviously love the sport. We're into the sports journalism side of things, sports media, but it's more like your fandom comes out. Where maybe if you're not living or you're not rooting for Europe or the US, like it's more just exciting to watch and just to see some of the best golfers in the world outside of, I guess, your Corey Connors and your Nick Taylors. I don't know if they're top echelon, but some of them are obviously very high up. And so you're not getting that. And so you're not cheering for anyone. It's more just like, this is exciting to watch. So maybe that factors in, but I guess it does. I don't know if it has the same juice as, watching Rory win the Masters and everything coming down to Sunday as much, but I think there are still a lot of social media, a lot of cool storylines, and I think it's just fun to sit back and watch like any other golf tournament.
I mean, I love, like, this will never happen, but I mean, if some of these Canadians can, maybe break through or win a couple majors, get into the top 5 in the world, why can't we change it to Team North America instead of Team America and Team Europe? Yes. Why can't we get a couple of these Canadians if they've earned their spot? I'm not saying like you just throw them in there because domestically, we should. It's like, no, like I said, if these guys can break through, become some of the top players in the world and prove themselves, I don't see why, the PGA or whoever puts on the Ryder Cup wouldn't at least consider the idea of putting, adding some Canadians in there as well, and just adding to the scope of the event in general. So I know we have I think it's the President's Cup. I'm not even too familiar with the event itself.
Oh, right.
There is an event, I think that's like Canada versus America, but like to have the two teams kind of come together and face off against the best from Europe, I think would be an incredible way to showcase that too. So again, I don't ever expect that to happen just because golf is one of the most, tradition based sports, and they probably aren't going to change something like that for no reason. But like I said, if we ever saw a guy break through and was to be like the best player, the number 1 player in the world, if it was Corey Connors, I think they would want to get Corey Connors into an event like that. So so we'll just have to see, and maybe it's a future generation thing where we see some future Canadian golfers break through and get included in a tournament like that. So that's awesome.
I love that. No, I love that because there are so many sports like basketball, soccer, where you've seen more development. You've seen that the Canada as a team is better. Golf, obviously, you've seen it a little bit, and I feel like that's cool. And tennis, same thing. Like we've talked about how there's some solid tennis players, right? But I know it's cool seeing like North America versus Europe events. Like the All-Star game for the NHL used to have that. And again, different sport. Non-Canada has been very good at hockey for a long time. It has been different. And maybe it's because of like the fact that golf is so structured, and the fact that LIV, like, oh my God, it was like the biggest news in golf ever when LIV came in and kind of blew up the whole tradition of it. Maybe that opens the door for something like this to be a little bit different, to say, hey, like we have an opportunity especially if a Corey Connors is top 5, like the U.S. is probably going to want to claim him as a player, an opportunity. So we'll see. I mean, maybe it depends on if Europe wins this year. If Europe wins this year, that might be like, hey, then maybe we need to just adopt a Canadian rather than just adopt the best U.S. players, and maybe we're lacking in 1 or 2 spots or something. Now, I don't know if they're starved for talent, but I don't know. Be interesting concept for sure.
Well, and quickly too, you brought up the point of Canadians potentially playing for like an international team. I think in the NBA, are talking of going back to like a world versus U.S. Type of all-star event, and in that scenario, Canadians I believe would be playing on an international team as opposed to an American team. So maybe I've got it backwards, and maybe Team Europe will be adopting some of our Canadian guys, and we'll see that like a world thing, and we go back to our roots that way. So that would be fun too. But either way you swing it, you want to see the best Canadians play in the the most watched tournaments every year. So
yes, and you're bringing in like a major audience that probably would care a lot more. Like it's a sport where, hey, why not bring in more like the Canadians are going to cheer for one or the other. I don't even know who I would want to win now. Like I truthfully am just here to watch golf, and it's exciting to watch, but I don't know what side I would want to pick, because both sides probably have benefits and good players, and both are like, oh well, one's closer to home, but why do I feel more akin to Europe sometimes? Who knows? So, but that's a good point. Maybe in the future we'll kind of keep our hopes up.
You never know.
Other than that, I think that's it, man. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff to look forward to sports-wise in the next couple of weeks, so we'll have a lot of coverage of it as some of this stuff really ramps up. But for now, I think that's solid, unless there's anything we missed.
No, man, that was a great conversation. Like you said, this is a huge week for the Blue Jays. We're wishing them luck, and hopefully next week we're back talking about no wild card, or maybe they've won a wild card round by then. And we're looking to the DS. But either way you swing it, it's been a great season for those Jays, and just excited to see what we have left.
Yeah, so we'll wrap things up. Excited for the next couple of weeks. Go Jays, go. Other than that, Brandon, another episode down the pipeline. We'll be back next week, hopefully all 3 of us. Otherwise, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll catch you next time.